CPI in South Africa in the month of October came in at 5.5%. In the studio in Johannesburg is Etienne Leroux, who's the chief economist at RMB. Good news or bad news, Etienne? Are going to play good cop, bad cop, because on the good side, it means that interest rates are not going up. On the bad side, of course, what it means is that there's no economic activity in South Africa.
Indeed, and that's the policy dilemma that the central bank has, and why interest rates will probably stay unchanged for quite some time, Lindsay.
Etienne, but I mean, you know, the SARB has, and we've been saying this for some time, stuck between a rock and a hard place with the issues around quantitative easing, the impact that might have on appetite for South African debt, and, you know, the need to keep interest rates at a certain level. On the other hand, the need to support economic growth in a benign inflation environment. I mean, how do you see this all playing out tomorrow in some of the commentary they give us?
Well, once again, if you think about the global picture, the most recent data out of the US and Japan was not too bad. But then if you zoom into South Africa, the most recent data has actually been on the soft side. So once again, you have the dilemma. Better global outlook, locally things are deteriorating on the margin. When you think about inflation, today's inflation print, like the one before it, was actually quite good, but then you have to see it in the context of a weaker currency and potential pass-through effects later on. And you also have to see that in the context of wage settlements that has been relatively high. So once again, it's a good cop, bad cop story. I think these kind of developments will persist for quite some time, and hence why policy doesn't have to move at all for a while.
Etienne, we can't really do much with interest rates at the moment. If we go down 0.5%, that's sort of 10% if you take it from the base of the repo rate, which is quite a big move. So logically, if there is going to be an interest rate cut, it's going to be 25 basis points. But what possible difference can that make?
On the margin, I guess it will boost confidence a little bit. Considering the poor confidence data we've had yesterday and the day before, it could lift spirits somewhat. But you're right, 25 basis points in the bigger scheme of things is not certainly going to prompt consumers to go and shop and businesses to invest and so on and so forth. So I think the important thing here for me is to consider is the fact that policy rates are negative in real terms. That's suggestive of a stimulatory monetary policy, and at the same time fiscal policy is also relatively stimulatory. So from a policy point of view, I don't think we should be asking for much more. We should be addressing the stuff that's keeping the economy back, and the National Development Plan is pretty clear on what those issues are. So I don't think we should be relying too much on policymakers to try and get things going.
What are your thoughts on the interest rate differential South Africa still has with the developed world? Because if you look at the United States, we're coming up to the 5-year anniversary of near zero interest rates. We've got the ECB looking at potentially cutting the deposit rate there, having a negative rate there. So you're still looking at very low rates in that part of the world for some time. I mean, South Africa does have a bit of perhaps room to maneuver on that front, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, if it wasn't for that, the rand probably would have been even weaker. So I think it would be risky, with the currency so volatile as it is, to cut rates locally. I think potentially it can weaken the rand a little bit. That's debatable. But I think certainly that's something that the central bank will consider, no doubt. I think coming back to your opening remark, when you think about monetary policy globally, the one thing that we are sure about is that monetary policy globally, in the developed economies at least, will stay very accommodative for quite some time. So we can bank on that. And locally, as I suggest, no real reason why interest rates should be moving either way anytime soon.
Apart from these three factors, there is three justifications for the interest rates to go down, Etienne, and this is me as a layman saying this. The rand is behaving itself. Every time it gets near 10, 30, 40, 50, it regains its composure. So I think probably the rand has bottomed in the short and medium term. We've also got growth, which is anemic at best in South Africa, and we've also got something called an election coming up next year apparently, and although the South African Reserve Bank is essentially ring-fenced, or they say they're ring-fenced, there will be political pressure after the numbers we've had today to say, please cut interest rates so you can do exactly what you said, in other words, engender some confidence in the proletariat.
Well, that's the good cop story. I'm going to play bad cop now. I think there are solid reasons why you you should not be cutting interest rates at this point. Thinking about the currency being volatile, number one. Point number two, the current account deficit is still large, even post possible revisions. I think it would be risky to cut interest rates when you still sit with a 6.5% or 6% of GDP current account deficit. And then coming back to a point that I've made earlier, wage settlements in the last couple of months have been very, very decent, much higher than inflation. That obviously argues against easing policy at this point.